And if we do that, we can create an entirely new civilization on Earth that will go on for hundreds of thousands of years in peace and abundance. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a complete corruption of the fourth estate, of the freedom of the press. You have to question what part of it is real, what part of it is hoaxed, and why would they want people to think that there's a threat? What Reagan said, what General MacArthur said. Because I always ask people, aren't you tired yet? Aren't you tired of hating? Aren't you tired of fear? I mean, we went from, in the South where I grew up, I had an African-American, we just said black back then. I had a black girlfriend in high school in 1972 and 3 in North Carolina. Let me tell you, this ain't Toronto. And I was almost murdered. I was chased by some rednecks who were screaming the N-word lover at me as they chased me on my bicycle and ran me into the woods. And, I remember as a child going to my father's Sears store where he sold fencing, and there were white and black water fountains. I was 4 or 5 years old. This was about 1959 or 60. And I went to one time, and I was thirsty, and it was August, and it's the South, and it's hotter than blue hell. And so I go over and I'm drinking out of this one. I can't read because I'm 4 years old. And this old woman comes up to me and shakes me. Don't drink out of that. That's for the coloreds. And I said, well, is the water poison? No. I said, well, will it hurt? It was like magical because my family was not racist. But it was this whole magical belief system of the Jim Crow South. I lived in it. Now we have a magical belief system about what I call alienism, who we have to be afraid of. Same techniques have been used by the same demagogues who want to control you through fear and create the foundation for war. Don't take it. Don't believe it. We can't be fooled again. It's like the Who. But we have been fooled again, over and over. So this is my wake-up call. This movie is the wake-up call for that. Then we went through, of course, the civil rights era. And I was involved with that. And we made great progress, but we're not quite there yet. But lo and behold, then we get into the whole thing where there's one religion fighting another, which is nothing new, but has been escalating rapidly since we've been involving ourselves in the Middle East. And then we have the whole question of gender equality. And let's not forget, it is Pride for Toronto, I understand, this weekend. Happy Pride, the LGBT folks. That people were routinely killed for being gay or lesbian, and certainly thrown in prison. So I think we have to realize that humanity has this multi-thousand year history of finding any difference we have with each other and making war out of it and hatred. And that is what we have to transcend. To me, that's the original sin of the human race. Is that if you look at our genetic roots from primates, monkeys, they organize into troops that do get into wars and they do murder each other. And we've carried that proclivity into our culture. So if somebody is a different color, a different race, a different sexual orientation, a different religion, a different ethnicity, my God, for so many years, hundreds of years, there were conflicts in Ireland, and it was white Christians that happened to be Protestant blowing up white Christians that happened to be Catholic. Doing. Now we're supposed to figure out how to live together in the cosmos with civilizations from other star systems. You see what a leap this is? How are we going to do that? You can't go to war because it'd be the end of all life on Earth. The weapons are too powerful. They make a hydrogen bomb look like a tinker toy. Trust me on this. I know what these weapons are. So the only path forward is one of universal peace, not world peace. World peace would have been 1917. All right, and then League of Nations. We have to establish universal peace. And that was why I left medicine. all right, to get that message out. We have to go from where we are to a civilization that understands that there is a singularity of consciousness, of the mind, that unites all intelligent life in the universe, and that we are those people. Now, a lot of the problem with this whole issue has been also the extent to which the media is corrupted. And Mr. Hellier referred to some of it, but I want to play this clip from a counterintelligence. This is a professional disinformation officer, and he's in the movie Unacknowledged, but he comes clean. Listen to this. I got some answers out of him I never thought I'd get. Let's play Officer Doty.
Yeah, the high level producers and directors. Yeah.
And how were they paid so that it wasn't?
Cash. Yeah, you pay. What you do is you make them sign a form and you tell them, you got to report this to IRS. But whether they do it or not, you're not going to give your form to IRS. I paid, I better not say. Some of them are large.
He's talking about paying off the media. Now, when you see his whole interview, which is a bonus feature on iTunes, and also we have a DVD of it from our online SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS Disclosure.com. You get this whole interview. It's like 2 or 3 hours. He's talking about how, as a counterintelligence officer, he would carry bags of cash, not just to local and at Kirkland Air Force Base, but national media, to get their cooperation on this subject. And then we have the astonishing fact that the constitutional attorney, Daniel Sheehan, was involved in a case where he saw a document where there were 42 people who were the editors and people who were national security correspondents at the major North American and European papers that were on the payroll of the CIA. Directly. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a complete corruption of the fourth estate, of the freedom of the press. So thank goodness we have the internet now, but the internet is a non-selective filter. Everything gets put up there. Information, disinformation, nonsense, rubbish, truth, all of it's up there. But the mainstream media routinely kills these stories. And what's interesting, and let's not talk about ancient history, we will in a moment, because that all started back in the 40s with the Roswell event. The last 8 weeks. Since when is a crowdfunded, independent, modest budget documentary gets released and it's #1 on the world's largest platform, iTunes, globally for 2 months, and no major media will do a story about it? That's true. No, it's not, they have Bigelow, who's been working with the cabal on 60 Minutes. At the same time, this is on #1. So what you find is that the corruption is ongoing in the media. And the only way we're going to get around it is with the freedoms of the internet, but also word of mouth, all of us, to everyone we know. I want to play this next clip from Carol Rosin, who was referenced by Paul Hellier. She's a very dear friend, and she had been Wernher von Braun's spokesperson for the last few years of his life. Listen to this carefully. You can play that one.
When von Braun was dying in front of me, the very first day that I met him, he had tubes draining out of his side. And he was tapping on the desk telling me, "You will come to Fairchild." I was a school teacher. "You will come to Fairchild and you will be responsible for keeping weapons out of space." The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. And the next enemy was asteroids. The last card is the alien card. And all of it, he said, is a lie. A lie.
Yep. Now play the next one. Listen very carefully.
have you been exposed, or did you come across in your career and your network the false INW or the deceptive indication and warnings projects related to this?
Yes.
And what did you find out about those?
That's pretty hush. I don't think I should talk about that. Yeah.
I mean, that's why when I briefed the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, that was the main subject.
That is, that's very sensitive. Yeah, it's very sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He's admitting to the false flag, but he won't go into the detail. What he doesn't say is volumes. Now play the next one.
We did do that, yes.
I'm asking about the
OSI did that. There was a special group out of the 7602nd Air Intel Wing at Fort Belvoir. They came out and did that. They had these people that had maybe some sort of defects, anatomical defects that were brought in to fool people and thinking they're aliens. Yeah. I can't give you any specifics because the program is still classified, and they probably still doing it. I wouldn't doubt it. They were still doing it.
Okay, I think this is a bleed over from another clip. The key point was I was asking him about staging alien abductions. We did not go into mutilations, and I basically asked him, are you aware of this? If you look at his whole interview, and in the book Unacknowledged, the whole transcript is in there. The book has about 10 times more information than the film. And he talks about the fact that there were some specific cases he knew about in Washington State where people saw something they shouldn't have seen that was man-made, and they then sent in a home invasion team of aliens that were man-made to attack them. Now, this is very reminiscent of the Stan Romanek case. I remember you heard some years ago, and he was on Larry King and all these shows with Boo, you know, the alien that would pop its head up. Well, I went to his home, and Ricky Butterfast, who's here with me, can attest to this, and to meet with him and see what had actually happened. And it turns out he had sold the rights to the tape recordings I'm about to describe to Disney, which black shelved them. Now, in this particular case, in one of these incidents, he was having like his medicine bottles were being like microwaved and melted in his cabinet, and weird stuff going on, and electromagnetic strangeness in his house. And one particular day, he had a camera set up, a video camera. He was in his kitchen and it was running, and this alien walks in and apparently throws a canister, some chemical, and he passes out, knocks the camera over. And there had been someone who kept warning him about what was going on. Apparently his father was in the Air Force, and there must have been a friendly on the inside who knew what game they were running on Stan. And he had this tape recording, and it was a tape recording of a computer-generated voice saying, "Stan," it was a female British-sounding voice, "Stan, it's one of the fake ones. That was a fake one," over and over again. And I'm sitting there with a MUFON investigator, and Ricky Butterfast and myself, and Stan Romanek and his wife. I said, "Oh yeah, obviously that's a fake one." They said, "We don't know what that means." I said, "That's a man-made one. We've been building those out of the underground facilities. I've been in, I know exactly who's building those. That's not an ET." And they went, "What?" They didn't even know that was possible. Well, Doty admits that they have done this. So then the question, you have to then take everything you've ever read and everything you've ever seen and go, was it real or was it Memorex, as they used to say in the commercials? You know, is it real or was it something that was made up for its psychological warfare value? And I'm quoting from a CIA document from 1953. To what extent have we been deceived? And so I think this is why we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. And I have had contact with ETs, and I have also been targeted with what he's describing. Both, and I know the difference. And I can tell you that it's quite clear the difference. and the electromagnetic weapon systems that can induce an abduction state, and then the things they can do are truly terrifying. And the same thing with the mutilations. You know, Dr. John Altshuler, who was a hematologist, pathologist in Denver, who was the original Snippy the horse investigator back in the late 60s in Colorado, is a very good friend of mine. And he concluded that those were 100% being done by paramilitary human groups made to look alien because they would frighten people, but they were also getting raw materials for their program life form labs that were in underground bases out there. And they were getting cell types and cells with high mitotic indices and things of that sort, on the tongue and the rectum and the genitals and what have you, because they reproduce quickly. But they would masquerade it as a UFO doing it. And he figured that out long ago. And then all of a sudden in the UFO subculture, an alien harvest. Well, no. Actually, it's a paramilitary harvest. And we know exactly what they're doing with these body parts, and we know why they're doing it. And they're very happy for people to think it was ET. That's how counterintelligence works. So if you want to study this issue, you cannot leave out, you can't just take anything at its face value. You have to question what part of it is real, what part of it is hoaxed, and why would they want people to think that there's a threat? What Reagan said, what General MacArthur said. Because, let's get back and follow on with what Paul Hellyer was sharing. How do you justify trillions of dollars in expenditures unless you have a bigger and more powerful enemy? You know, Leon Panetta, the CIA director for Obama for a period, and I provided a briefing to him, and you know, he said publicly, we're spending $110 billion a year chasing about 70 Al-Qaeda people in Afghanistan. He literally admitted 70. So in order for Halliburton to get their $150 a gallon for a jug of water no-bid contracts, you've got to have this war going on. Cheney's old company, Halliburton. So this is all contrived, but the big one's coming. You ain't seen nothing yet, friends. If you think Vietnam was a disaster, or the Iraq War and ISIS and Afghanistan's a disaster, you just stay asleep and let this other one come rolling out over the public. So we have got to wake up and realize when we're being played and when we're being deceived and say, no, we're going to opt for universal peace. And we're going to opt for a new civilization. Free energy, peaceful contact with these civilizations, the ending of these cabals, and the ending of the stranglehold that the gangbangsters have on this planet. By the way, the reason the secrecy is so entrenched, if you acknowledge that a UFO is real, man-made or ET, the first question is going to be, how is it operating? When that's asked, it will be answered, because we have the answers. When that's answered, it's goodbye oil, petrodollar, your public utilities, hydropower, solar, nuclear power, internal combustion engines in your car, jet engines, rockets, all of it, bang. Obsolete. And we're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars in commodities that are traded on the Chicago Board of Trade, just in the commodities futures derivatives that would be obsolete. You wouldn't need, when you don't need coal, you don't need oil. So you can't have this subject come out without it also bringing out the sciences and technologies behind it, which is why they're desperate to keep it secret and to scare people with it and create all kinds of false flag things. And people say, when is the false flag event going to happen? I said, it happened. It's been happening since the 50s. We're 60 years into a false flag operation, but no one's looking at it properly. So I want you to readjust your thinking about that. I want to play one more clip. It's a bit of a long one to give you an idea to what links they will go to. This is about the Cash Landrum case in Houston, where all these people were virtually killed and radiated by the crash of a man-made UFO.
I don't know
Did you
if there
ever
was
meet an Air Force pilot who piloted them?
only the Cash Landrum. I actually interviewed him.
Oh, you
Or
did?
there were four of them. I mean, the two pilots. There was a systems officer that was handling the equipment, and then there was I can't remember what the fourth person did. He was a navigator or what he was. And I interviewed them, and everything that could have gone wrong, it took off fine from Nevada and flew perfectly. But when it was going to an air base. I can't remember which air base it was. Some air base in Texas. I think it was Webb Air Force Base in Big Springs, I think it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Webb.
This is a man-made
And
UFO.
when they tried to slow it down, that's when the problems happened. And then they cut power, and so many things went wrong that they almost crashed. They called for rescue helicopters because they thought we were going to crash. So these helicopters came out, but they finally got it going again, and they landed at some place. Apparently it was just past where they spurred all this radiation on those 2 poor people, or 3 people, or however many it were. And then they flew it back to Nevada. It was pretty huge. It was one of those big ones. It was not a saucer shaped. It was more huge oval shape.
Was it man-made?
It was reverse engineered.
Reverse engineered,
Yeah.
yes.
They trained 9 months before they ever flew it. And then they trained another, I can't remember how long, 4 or 5 months, flying it all around Nevada. And it worked fine. But the problem is, it's a reverse engineered alien craft with one of our nuclear propulsion systems.
Right.
Well, that wasn't refined because they couldn't figure out how to reverse engineer the aliens. They got it to work at times, but they couldn't manipulate it the way they needed to for a human pilot to fly it. So they had to put one of our propulsion system in it, and it malfunctioned. And they trained, and there wasn't any.
That. I'll summarize the rest of it. So
they were flying.
What's really important about this is that this is astonishing. So if there's an attorney who wants to go into federal court with me, we'll do this. He is admitting he was the principal investigator on the Cash Landrum event, which you can Google it, where there were these people critically injured and hospitalized with radiation because there was a breach of the reactor that spewed all this radiation. And as this UFO was descending outside Houston, it was spraying the people underneath with this horrible oil. And they virtually, several people almost died, and I think later did. And he admits, and he was the principal investigator for the Air Force Office of Special Investigation that debriefed the 4 human occupants of it. Now, for years, they were very happy to let the public think that was an alien craft and the aliens radiated those poor people. It was not. It was the U.S. Air Force covert programs. They flew out of Nevada, meaning Area 51. So this is the sort of thing that goes on. And it's criminal. Those people actually tried to go to court to sue the government, and they simply said, this project doesn't exist. We have no knowledge of it. Because the people that they were trying to sue in the mainstream government did not. That's the nature of an unacknowledged special access project. And this is why we have to do disclosure. We have to do it now. We have to create teams to make peaceful contact that are non-militaristic with these civilizations. We must bring out these technologies to save the Earth's environment, and we have to liberate humanity from the gangbangsters. That's what has to happen. It's a very tall order, and we need every single hand on deck to do it. And I hope you will join us in doing so. Now we're going to take a few questions, or yeah? I didn't know we were going to do Q&A. If you had the ability, do it. I think we have till 3:30.
Just 15 minutes.
Yeah, about 15 minutes. So if people have any questions?
Okay, what we're going to do is, we just have 15 minutes. One question, okay? Myself and one of the volunteers over there will get you a mic, and we'll do the best we can. One question only, okay? I'll start.
Yeah, and just a question, not a soliloquy.
Right, okay, please.
Hello, thank you very, very much for being here. So something like the Corey Good stuff that we're all hearing about, the galactic wars that are going on, those are all false flag? Those are people that have been convinced that they're doing this? And
Yes, I mean, well, we have to understand there are witting and unwitting people in this.
yeah,
Okay, so the quick answer is, without talking about personalities, I really don't care. I like to talk about ideas and not people. There is great value in presenting this Manichaean us versus them cosmic view. All right, this is the Cosmic Expo, right? So the truth is, many people have been in classified projects and been given experiences through these electronic systems that interface with consciousness that are absolutely real to them. Now, I remember in 1994 meeting with a man that in the 50s had invented an electronic system that you could wear so that you would be able to remote view in consciousness any place. But it also had turned it into a weapon system where they could give someone a consciousness experience of anything they wanted. And, hello? We lost power here. And give any experience they wanted. And the man I'm quoting here is a genius electronics engineer who was in his 80s and wanted to give this system to me. I didn't want to touch it. And he said, basically, if we want you to have a personal conversation with your personal God, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, whoever, you will have it. You'll believe it's real. You will pass a lie detector test that it is real. And that's how good it is. Werner von Braun on his deathbed, in addition to warning about the hoaxing of an alien attack, actually said the only thing more frightening than that scenario and that plan is the electronic warfare systems that interface with thought and consciousness that can hoax experiences for people and that have been abused in this way. So what I'm saying is, I'm not going to ascribe intent to anyone. I think a lot of this is very innocent. But I can say that there are people who are either witting or unwittingly purveyors of a narrative of conflict which is simply not there and for which there's not a scintilla of objective evidence. The other point is that one of the problems is and I know I'm going to sound boring here, nobody knows science. So, my uncle was Grumman, of Northrop Grumman, and designed the lunar module. I mean, we're a science family, and I go, yeah, but people don't even understand how this thing works. They just want to know they can push a button and make something happen. But when you start talking about interstellar and intergalactic technologies, the idea that there would be wars, I mean, it's great for Star Wars, and it's great for George Lucas. He's made billions and billions of dollars on it. But the truth is, if you weaponize technologies that are 1 million years more advanced than our hydrogen bombs, you're going to detonate that sucker once on each side and everyone's gone. Your planet is turned into a pink mist floating through the cosmos. So the idea that there's going to be this sort of like cowboys and Indians doing this business, it's only because people don't understand what the science and technologies are behind transdimensional interstellar travel. And so, it makes for a sexy narrative. It's great because it can scare the hell out of people. Makes no sense. Any more than mutual assured destruction makes any sense. Like Paul was talking about people in the Pentagon, let's get into a thermonuclear war with Russia. Well, the thousands of thermonuclear weapons that are thousands of times more powerful than Hiroshima, you're not going to survive that. The whole planet wouldn't. So, and those are technologies from the 40s and 50s. We're talking about technologies that are hundreds of thousands or millions of years more developed. So I think we have to look at how does life evolve in the universe? And we're going to talk about this a lot tomorrow in the workshop that I'm going to do here from 3 until 7, is that there is a morphogenic field propagation, but there's a selective process. That if you reach a certain point and you don't make it to what Michikaku calls a level 1 civilization that's peaceful and living in harmony with its environment, and not destroying its planet, you don't make it any further. So we're a level 0 civilization. To get to a level 1, which is the minimum we have to get to survive this current period of time, we have to become peaceful on Earth and peaceful in space and we have to bring out the technologies, and we have to end the era of endless war. It's required. And other civilizations have come this way before us. And if they don't get that right, they terminate. They destroy themselves. So this is what I call the selection of non-hostility in interstellar civilizations that is built into the system of the speed of light barrier. Because if you go beyond the speed of light and you still have this consciousness of violence, you're not going to survive very long because of the nature of that kind of technology being weaponized.
There's a
Next
question on the other side there,
Yes.
I think.
Hi, Stephen, and thank you so much for this presentation. Sort of a dual question. What is the difference between, or how do you tell the difference between a man-made alien and a real alien, and a man-made craft and a real craft?
Good question. Sometimes you can't, because the man-made ones have gotten very good, but at a close proximity, if you can see superstructure, meaning the airform, the ET objects are seamless, and they have no visible parts. The man-made ones do have visible parts, like if you look at a Boeing, you'll see where the rivets are, and you'll see, and they are made, and I'll get into this tomorrow about what transdimensional manufacturing is, how you create a kind of an infra-ultrasonic energy field that's in this dimension just beyond linear space-time and materialize objects in totality out of not digging up ore and digging up metal and cobbling it together, but materializing it. Okay, and that's how they're craft, and that's also how they're suits. So I'll give you another example. The actual experience, because I head up, well, we have tens of thousands of people now going all over the world doing close encounters of the fifth kind, making contact. No one's ever been bothered by ETs, but we have been bothered by what you're asking about. For example, we were near Joshua Tree once, had this beautiful experience with this seamless craft and these beings that partially materialized around us. I'll show a picture of it tomorrow, of this ambassador from the Andromeda galaxy. And then when we got back to our houses, one of the groups that was on my team were in a house near mine, and they had this program life form climb up on the house and was banging on the windows. And it was like something like not a Chakupa opera, whatever you call it. It was like one of these crazy things, but it was like right out of Montauk, or right out of, but that was a man-made creature meant to scare. And so one of the people in the house had a firearm, chased it off, and it ran off into the desert, and there were a group of SUVs at the base of this desert road far away that apparently it went back to. And that was a man-made program life form that looked, it would fool everyone to be an ET. So the first thing I train people who are on these CE5 contact expeditions to be able to identify the difference. And of course there's also an invasiveness to it, a frightening aspect to it. None of the ET experiences. So I say, well, the aliens are man-made. The ETs, I said, we need to rename this conference. So get rid of alien. It's a xenophobic word, I hate it. Sorry. But really, we're talking about, it's really very clear once you understand what to look for. There's also a sort of invasiveness. So if you become frightened, in every case, I can't think of an exception to this, on our teams where we've had a craft or a being get some very close, if someone is afraid, they stop and they back off. Whereas the military ones are going to come right at you, buddy, and they ain't going to back off. So there's an invasiveness to the ones that are man-made. And then there are other characteristics. For example, one of the men who was on a naval ship when we were testing our ICBMs shooting downrange in South Atlantic, the captain came to me with this story of how we shot down this ET craft. And to make a long story short, the reason he called me was that when he retrieved the ejection pod that was seamless, and there were these 4 39-inch tall ETs, and he said they were handsome little men. They look with the skin color of Sicilians. Very politically incorrect, even in a red state, but never mind. And no hair, and I'm quoting, I mean, hey, it's just the truth. And he said, but the reason I'm calling you is that they had this uniform on that was some type of metallicized cloth that was very fine, but there were no buttons and zippers. And he was perplexed for 30 years. How in God's name did they get in and out of them? Because you couldn't. You could not get in and out of this uniform. There was no way to get, none of this. So, and it was tight, and there was no way to get over your head or take it off. I said, they have a electronic system where those items materialize on and off. They would zip, zip. He says, oh, that's it. And then I explained to him what transdimensional interstellar manufacturing consists of. So, ironically, a lot of these military guys who approach me have just had one little picture of something, and they come to me because they kind of know that I've been collecting the picture from 1,000 different sources. So in a sense, we've become our own intelligence gathering operation with the Disclosure Project. But that was the main reason he called. And that's another thing to look for, is the clothing, subtle things like that. I mean, you wouldn't think to look for it, but it's very important. Another question.
One more question back here. I think we have time for one more question, okay? Back here.
Yeah, sure. You the boss.
Question I have is reading about Operation High Jump. Now, Byrd in the end turns around and says we have to be very careful because there's objects that can fly from pole to pole. You're familiar with this. Is that a flag that's gone up, or is there something behind that that we're not supposed to know? Because Byrd was supposed to be down there in Operation High Jump for 6 to 8 months. After 2 months, they scattered home with their tail between their legs. But there's objects that are flying through the atmosphere from pole to pole.
Well,
fill me in.
It's been well known that they're one of the places that for decades now, probably 60 years, there have been covert military UFO-looking bases that are on the poles because they're very well hidden. It's also come to my attention recently from a man who's worked very closely with the United Nations and with the last CIA director, outgoing CIA director Brennan, that is apparently, particularly the southern Antarctica, is where a false flag would be launched from, so that these assets could be put up and get airborne enough. They wouldn't be coming from space, but they would look like they're coming from space, and there's very little detection in these very remote areas on either pole, up north or around the southern pole, and that there are underground facilities there. Now there are other ones, such as the Pine Gap area of Australia, and I have a man who worked there as a physicist, and that's a huge underground facility. That's a joint Air Force and NSA operation, and that is where a lot of the program life forms are being manufactured, by the way, is in that area of the central outback of Australia near Pine Gap. And I have interviewed a man who worked in the facility and how it's structured and how it's laid out. And interestingly, with this Air Force intelligence officer, Doty, he describes both the man-made research and development sections of Area 51, but also describes in detail the areas that are dealing with the true ET craft, and the two have no connection to each other. They're very compartmentalized, but he had access to both. So it's a very interesting, that whole interview is amazing. It could have been a whole documentary, but, and you can see it, I mean, it's available. So in closing, I'd like to just thank all of you for coming and for your support for Unacknowledged. I hope to see you tonight. We'll have more Q&A time after the film. We'll have an hour of it. And I want you to just leave with this one thought. Don't look to your governments to fix this. Look to yourselves and your neighbors. Look to what you can do. Because the Disclosure Project, I founded the Global Disclosure Movement after I had exhausted every single possibility going through the government that you and I know about. So I have not a lot of confidence in the governments as they currently exist because they are wholly owned assets of the cabal. I have a great deal of faith in the average man and woman on Earth to learn about this and do the right thing and come together And if we do that, we can create an entirely new civilization on Earth that will go on for hundreds of thousands of years in peace and abundance. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out the next one right here on the Best of Dr. Stephen Greer.